The New York Declaration of Refugees and Migrants, adopted unanimously, whereby all 193 member states of the United Nations committed themselves, and I quote, to actively promoting durable solutions, particularly on protracted refugee situations, with a focus on sustainable and timely return in safety and dignity, end of quote.
What a lovely evening in Amman, with those beautiful autumn's afternoons, and with the presence of His Highness Prince Hassan bin Talal al-Mu'azzam. Your Highness, we're very honored and delighted having you with us tonight to discuss a very important pressing issues. Your efforts, contributions, and involvement in trying to provide a comprehensive, just, and permanent solutions to the Palestinians' problem is globally acknowledged and also highly appreciated. And today we're dealing with an issue that has to do with probably the heart of the Palestinians' problem, that is the Palestinian refugees. A problem that's been there for the last more than 70 years, and probably with no sights on what might be happening in the very near or far future. I'm not going to take too much of your time because with the presence of His Highness, it's important to save every single minute and second for his thoughts that have been enlightening all of us for the last decades on this issue. I just wanted to raise some questions for all of us for our discussions to continue in the future. And that is maybe questions of what is much more important for the Israeli population that has to do with the national identity issue. Would it be the refugees or Jerusalem or other issues? And what do the Palestinian refugees really think? And what they want, do we really know? And other things would be, of course, is what the hosting states do think of the Palestinian refugees as well. Of course, the question would be always is what are the best options on the table for the time being dealing with this problem, the refugees, and what might be a best just solutions in the future. Without any delay, I would greatly and with a profound honor present to you His Highness Prince Hassan bin Talal to address us in this session. Your Highness.
Thank you, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is a travesty that 70 years on, and in contravention with the United Nations General Assembly Resolutions 194 and Article 13 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that the fate of millions of Palestinian refugees remains not only unresolved, but largely ignored. It is perhaps the most decisive of all the issues surrounding the Arab-Israeli conflict. And whilst to Israel it may appear an existential question, for those involved, and we should not ever forget that we're talking about human lives and human dignity, not statistics. It is an open wound into which salt is rubbed on a daily basis. The laws governing refugee status as it applies to the several waves of Palestinian refugees and the varying attitudes towards citizenship in host countries are well known to you all. I would just like to notify those who may have missed the earlier notification that the Global Refugee Forum, to be held on the 17th and 18th of December 2019, states that a periodic global refugee forum at ministerial level will be convened for all United Nations members, together with relevant stakeholders, to announce concrete pledges and contributions towards the objectives of the Global Compact, and to consider opportunities, challenges, and ways in which burden and responsibility sharing can be enhanced. This meeting, believe it or not, is the first global refugee forum to be convened on the 17th and 18th of December. So, in that context, and in the continuing context of burden sharing and pledging, I would like to ask what has happened to the rationale in its three complementary bodies of holding such meetings, particularly when it comes to Palestinian refugees. Firstly, international humanitarian law, refugee law and human rights law that are designed to protect the lives, health, and dignity of fellow human beings. And I would add to the right to protect, the right to respect. Recent months have witnessed barely disguised attempts to manipulate these for political ends, effectively depriving Palestinians of their status, rights, and prerogatives, or, as has been said, redefining them out of existence. This not only undermines the United Nations international law and justice, but I would refer to our friend Francesca Albanese's excellent articles on the subject, but has serious or terrifying implications for the uprooted across the globe. As the Palestinians themselves are testament, refugeehood is no temporary status, and without the full protection of the law and the bodies designed to ensure such protection, in the case of Palestinians, United Nations Relief Works Agency, they are left without recourse. Leaving aside for a moment the importance of empowering refugees, and I would like to emphasize, having worked with the Commission of that name, the legal empowerment of the poor, the emphasis on empowering and enabling for citizenship. We cannot continue, in the words of Peter Sutherland, to talk about refugees on Mars and nationals on Venus. We have to recognize the human dignity issue, which is, after all, common to the indignities being visited on all of us, not least of all in Jordan, where our population has quadrupled since the 1990s. My question in that context is, if we are to incorporate refugees into host countries, socio-economic development plans, and democratizing displacement, the subject of the Oxford Refugee Studies Centre's recent conference, the report on which we look forward to commenting is the implications for the descendants of refugees in protracted refugee situations. That is to say, approximately 2/3 of the entire refugee population. Where the same approach to be adopted towards the UNHCR, which does register, count, and protect them, such an approach simply does not bear thinking about. Once again, what are the human profiles, the humanitarian profiles of the refugees about whom we are speaking? Are we speaking solely in terms of numbers and statistics, or are we speaking in terms of human dignity, aspirations within the law, and the demand for citizenship? In that context, what does the word Arab mean? Are we not all Arabs? Is the word European a moniker, or does it carry a certain weight? It is clear then that the agenda cannot continue to be driven in binary terms, bilaterally. We are either going to move towards the polarization of hatred, istiqtab al-karahiyah, or the pluralization of respect, التنوع الداعي للاحترام المتبادل. This initiative, I feel, is timely, with a view to feeding those ministerial delegations in December, those at least who are prepared to read. I refer to the United Nations meeting in December and emphasize that it is time to inject innovative thinking. The current approach addresses migrants in their different categories, silos or ghettos, if you will, often masking political and cost-cutting agendas which offer no long-term solutions to the real people involved. How do we humanize the stats? There are global processes which need to be taken advantage of in this regard. The New York Declaration of Refugees and Migrants, adopted unanimously, whereby all 193 member states of the United Nations committed themselves, and I quote, to actively promoting durable solutions, particularly on protracted refugee situations, with a focus on sustainable and timely return in safety and dignity, end of quote. Additionally, in the declaration, we see the call for a comprehensive refugee response framework, CRRF, for each situation involving large movements of refugees, including in protracted situations. It opens a fresh avenue of exploration and should re-engage and re-energize the international community, crucial to which is participation beyond talking heads. Participation of academics, experts, and refugees themselves. Participation of civil society. Participation of the people who matter, which, by the way, is none of us here in this hall. It is the millions of people whom we are hoping could be empowered by this process, and above all, authentic voices from the region, which can give impetus and direction to international action. A critical redress is needed not only for the Palestinians, but for the whole stability of the region. I remember the Palestinian expression, القضية معقدة والقاضي يهودي والقرار جائر. This is not a one-way street. Of course, above all else, proper weight must be given to international law. The most successful approach in its inclusivity was the Conciliation Committee, UNCCP. But I urge once again, in the words of Peter Sutherland, that we drop the silos. We cannot continue to talk of refugees on Venus and nationals on Mars. Rather, we need to recognize the ensemble of humanity, not only a process, but participation, empowerment, and dignity. This will require a repositioning of UNRWA. In contrast to current attempts at its delegitimization, institutional development and improved linkages with UNHCR and potentially the GA itself, approving amendments to both their mandates while always preserving the unique role of UNRWA. Whether we are discussing the plight of the Rohingya, the Uyghurs, or our own immediate concern, the Palestinians, enforced misery will never bring stability to any region. On the contrary, I believe that adopting and furthering another enforced mandate, one of the Arkan al-Islam, zakat, universal zakat, is a tool that should be accountably, effectively managed in terms of human dignity for all refugees without discrimination, and particularly with reference to the Rohingya and the Uyghurs. I feel that we cannot continue to question status and citizenship and the right of responsibility and agency versus welfarism and dependency. In other words, sociographic peace, المجتمع والصورة, human peace, peace with humanity, not through enforcement. I have long called for a regional database, which became informatics and then became knowledge, bypassing our region. In brief, for knowledge and preparation for the mitigation of both natural and man-made disasters, as in the content of the call for a humanitarian order in 1989. We need an integrated context analysis of the implications for Arab communities of both the creeping and more overt annexation process. Likewise, of the implications for host communities on every level. The Rift Valley is nature's rift between Palestine and Jordan. The recent decision to move borders is not only front-ending a territorial supposition, but an extension of influence with scant consideration for the impact on quality of life. I'm not concerned with the red dots on the map if they are only the perception of one side. I am concerned with the toxic effects of those red dots on the map if they exclude the Arab population. As a host nation, our own record here in Jordan could perhaps be much better. But maybe it is not that bad. However, it saddens and angers me that we are seen simply as the recipient of aid. And I hope we are not seen as a client state of Israel, as they front end for the last 25 years of our peace treaties, solutions at the expense of Jordan. They degrade the credibility of interstate peace. We cannot continue to ignore the fact that our population has quadrupled with inevitable consequences in terms of carrying capacity and social cohesion. We desperately need institutional self-determination for this region, an economic and social council to assess vulnerabilities, potentially to offer algorithmic weighting and promote human dignity as the crucial component of security. And I have addressed our friends in the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for West Asia many times, saying that if the ESCAP region, the region for Asia and the Pacific, that deals with the ASEAN countries, monarchies, republics of different background and different provenance, not unlike our region, torn between wars, genocide, and all forms of hardship. Why is it that ASEAN has survived since 1967? And note that dramatic and drastic year, we have continued to fall from one platform to another. In attempting to empower and enhance our intra-independence, big or small, rich or poor, is it not time that we in the Levant, the Mashriq, built a platform for creative solutions regionally based on the spatial, human, and economic, absolute, truthful facts? A virtuous knowledge base is not what we need. The virtual knowledge base has to become virtuous if we are to shift our attitude from a litany of good intentions and far-reaching statements to a specific understanding of the facts on the ground. Homes being demolished, lives destroyed, and youth alienated to the point of violence. I hope that you gathered here today have given time to speaking and to listening. There will be a way out of the present conundrum, but it requires comprehension and rigorous attention to detail and possibly to a debate graph, a social debate graph, an economic debate graph, and a physical, spatial debate graph, where we can all enter into a conversation which is not descriptive, but based on vulnerability and marginalization. Together, we can counter the globalism of indifference facing refugees, counter the narrative of fear, and possibly produce practical proposals to hold governments and the international community accountable. As has been said, the opposition of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty in too many parts of the world is justice. In the words of my dear departed friend, Barbara Harrell Bond, our aspiration must be not just to be a voice for the voiceless, but to give the voiceless a voice of their own. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.